Hey everybody, I'm Jammer, and thank you guys so much for the outstanding, amazing, unparalleled support on my recent video where I talked about everything not in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. All the comments, all the feedback you talked about, and some of the things I missed, thank you for those corrections. But there was one thing I really noticed among many of the comments throughout that were on that video, was one particular line that I mentioned. One line. Of course, the big expansive subspace mode from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But, by popular opinion, most people prefer
World of Light over that anyways, so...
Sparked a really interesting debate and conversation in the comments. I didn't realize how divisive this topic was. A lot of people far prefer Subspace over World of Light, saying that these two adventure type modes shouldn't even be compared at all. So I thought this would be a very interesting topic to go over. Let's really take a deep look at these two modes, talk about them, and see if they're trying to reach the goal that they're trying to set up. I took it upon myself over the last week or so to start replaying Subspace Emissary, getting through it, and I'm here to report my findings that... wow. Upon replaying it, I think you guys might be looking back at it through rose-tinted glasses, nostalgia goggles or something. It's quite rough around the edges. I mean, beyond just trying to get used to the physics system of Brawl again, wow, I did not realize how slow this game actually felt. But we're not here to critique that, we're here to talk about the mode itself. And let's first start with what is really praised about Subspace Emissary. First and foremost thing is the cutscenes to tell a unified story, bringing all these franchises together. People love the idea of having these characters interact with each other beyond just being on screen together to fight. Smash Bros is one of, if not the biggest crossover in gaming history, bringing so many different series and franchises together. Having these characters interact beyond just playing against each other in a match is one of the really shining elements of this mode. You know, what if Pit and Mario teamed up? Or if Captain Falcon and Olimar cross paths? It's interactions like that you cannot find in any other official sense anywhere. Like, this is it. Bosses were also a great way to bring this experience together. Unique and creative boss fights featuring characters that aren't necessarily playable in Smash, but also can be big representative characters from different series, like fighting against Porky from Earthbound, or even Rayquaza from the Pokemon series. And another great thing in this mode is, this is the first time Smash Bros. Really had a chance to invent and create unique characters. In exception to the polygonal and the wireframe characters from the multi-man melees back in 64 and Melee, there really was no unique characters besides Master Hand in the entirety of the Smash Bros. Series. But for Subspace Emissary, they developed tons of different and unique enemies for you to fight along in your travels. While of course there was the occasional Goomba and Koopa, the majority of the time you were fighting all these unique characters. Albeit some of the characters were a little uninspired at times, they still kind of match the theming of this mode. If you break it down, Subspace is kind of a platforming game. You run, you jump, you attack enemies, and you get to the end of the stage. That's where we run into one of the biggest complications of Subspace Emissary. The fact that the worlds you're going through are very uninspired. Very basic and bland kind of backgrounds. You're just running through clouds, or just a generic forest. It's a missed opportunity that the fact that the world that these Smash Bros. Characters live in is just some generic world. There's no elements built into the environment that represent these series to say like, oh, you're in the Mushroom Kingdom right now, or now you're in Hyrule. There's none of the traits from the original series of these characters in this world. It's just like the characters are all thrown together in this weird planet that just is bland. The biggest problem is honestly the level design. You'll have your generic normal levels to help players get used to the controls and the mechanics of this game. And then to kind of iterate upon that, what designers will do is you'll enter a level and you'll be introduced a new mechanic. For example, in this case, it's these little circles that go across the rails. The shining light coming off it encourages the player to maybe try to attack it and hit it and see what happens. Upon doing that, you see that it goes along the rail and hits the enemies, or maybe it'll break some blocks. In the beginning of the level, there's a little bit of a playground to kind of just hit them around and see what happens. Start of level's good, but they don't finish the rest of that design philosophy. How it's supposed to work in game design is you're supposed to now offer more unique challenges towards the end of the level based on this initial mechanic of the level that you introduce. But what they do here in Subspace is this little thing is useless. You just hit it and I guess it hits enemies, it hits some blocks here and there. It's never iterated upon. There's really no uniqueness from it. It's just It just exists. You could go through almost the entire stage without even touching one of these things. And this kind of level layout is supposed to encourage exploration in some sort of sense. But really, there's no payout for it. There'll be some secret areas where you can like go through, you can break some blocks and go in a secret door. But when you go in there, it's basically just a blank room. And the reward for finding this area, the player is rewarded with items from Smash Bros. Just items that they could use. But what was the point of even going in this room? Why not just have it be like a hidden item block where you hit it and then the paper comes out or something? Like honestly, what's the point of this room? Why am I even here? One of the other struggles of this mode was trying to make the platforming balanced across the entire cast. You need to make sure the platforms are at certain heights so then the player can make precise jumps and jump high enough or space gaps and stuff like that. But when you have such a diverse cast as you do Smash Bros. And all characters are playable on every single stage, the platforms have to cater to that entire cast because not all characters are built the same. Characters vary in jump height, run speed, number of jumps even. Especially because every character even has 3 jumps. You can't just design a fluent kind of platforming system around a singular jump like Mario or Donkey Kong does. In order to design it correctly, they have to make it so every platform available for you to jump to with the character with the shortest jump. Meaning that tricky or secret areas where you drop down into will have additional platforms to help you get back out of it rather than just being able to jump out of it entirely. This kind of leads to a very clunky way of navigating the environment because there's just a clutter of platforms everywhere that just really don't feel designed. They just feel like they're thrown in there. The last thing I want to talk about are the enemies themselves. While a lot of them do have a lot of unique abilities and attributes and whatnot, it's a very wonky kind of combat system. Because it doesn't really teach the player how the knockback physics even work in regular Smash games. Most enemies stay stationary in place. What it comes down to is encounters with enemies are not like regular Smash battles. They don't inherit the regular knockback properties as it would if you were fighting a player character in a regular brawl. Because of that, the expectation of fighting these enemies is very different because sometimes you'll do a couple of attacks, right? And the enemy won't even move and they'll be able to completely counterattack you within seconds because they don't really suffer any knockback in that way. And that's the problem because every single character's moveset is designed around the fact that when you hit the opponent, they're going to have some sort of knockback, leading you to be able to use combos and having attacks linked together. Everything you know in versus multiplayer modes of Super Smash Bros. Is completely mute and pointless here in this adventure mode. And in the same turn, this mode doesn't teach players to be any sort of better at playing Smash Bros. Look, I don't hate Subspace. I play the thing non-stop till I beat it. That's how I unlocked all the characters, you know? But upon returning to it to really objectively look at this mode and critique it, it doesn't hold up. While they did a couple of things right, I think it still has a lot of faults, and I quickly got bored of it. But let's not jump the gun. Let's not just say, oh, Worldlight is already better. Let's take an objective look at this mode as well. Let's talk about some things in common it has with Subspace Emissary. This mode also offers unique boss encounters similar to how Subspace does. Because of Subspace's more linear progression, you know, the boss fights are actually spaced out more progressively, while in World of Light, you can kind of explore and do whatever you want and maybe play 10 plus hours of this mode and never even touch a boss if you don't want to. So the bosses aren't necessarily spaced out as evenly, but depending on how you explore, you can run into encounters and set your goals based on what bosses you do want to fight. This is a great thing these two modes both have in common, are the unique boss encounters. World of Light, like Subspace, also encourages you to test out new characters one at a time. In Subspace, you know, you unlock characters in a certain order, and World of Light is in a similar fashion, but it's based on where you explore. So it kind of slowly dishes out characters for newcomers to play, and if you just play the mode like every time you get a new character, you just play them to see if you like them and get used to them, it's a great way to experiment and play with the entire cast. One thing this mode does great is it finally does custom equipment right. They've been playing around with it since stickers in Brawl, which has kind of augmented some moves and stuff like that. Of course, in Smash Wii U, the whole boot, shield, and sword custom equipment to increase attack, defense, and speed. It was kind of a mess, but it was an iteration from Brawl anyways. I think Spirits is finally where they did custom equipment right, because there are a lot of unique encounters and mechanics you can use with these custom equipment, depending on like what items you want to equip going into it, or unique abilities you want to equip with your character. There's a lot to experiment here, and there's really no like definitive way that's going to be best. There's some setups that are good for boss encounters, some that are only specific to certain fights you're going to do. And speaking of which, these spirit battles are pretty creative being representative of the character they're trying to be. I mean, some are better than others, obviously. You obviously have to extend your imagination a little bit, but if you do, it actually is very representative of the characters they're trying to be. Building off that, unlike Subspace, these encounters are real Smash battles, meaning playing these spirit battles within World of Light, you'll understand the character you're playing in a context of a multiplayer format as well, because knockback still works the same, so moves and combos can all still link together. There's a one-to-one parallel there with those two modes. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, it really is just one CPU battle, one after another, after another, after another. Well, yes, they do have some unique twists and mechanics here and there. It does get very repetitive over and over and over and over because it's just CPU battles, really. And because of that, the setting of all these battles are just on stages that are offered in the game. So there's really no world or level to explore like there was in Subspace. I mean, not that Subspace offered much, but it offered at least something, right? Rather than just offering the stages you already have in the game. While there's so much customization in equipping spirits and getting the custom equipment, equipping the right ones can kind of just be annoying sometimes. I mean, yes, there's the auto-equip one, but sometimes they don't even set you up with a good setup. And it's really annoying when you're in a progression of a path and you run into a super difficult spirit and you can't beat it. You're just not even close. It's really annoying to have to to have to leave that for later and backtrack after you've leveled up more. Like, the arbitrary difficulty level of the fact that, they just have a higher spirit power level than you do is kind of jarring, where it just feels obscenely way more difficult than it should be, and it only serves the purpose of forcing the player to come back, basically. They try to spice up the overworld by letting you use some spirits on the overworld, like, Toon Link on the train, or the F-Zero Racer to drive around, but again, it's kind of another obstruction, saying, oh, if you don't have this spirit yet, come back after you explored somewhere over here to get it, and then you could explore this level. I guess it helps for some sort of progression with this mode, kind of like leading players to, okay, you need to at least be at this point before you can enter this level and stuff like that, but it's really not the most unique mechanic. After countless CPU spirit battles, it really just ends up boiling down to using the C-Stick with Bowser. If you can cause enough damage and enough knockback to the opponent you're fighting and make sure you stay safe enough, you can cheese a lot of spirit battles that you shouldn't otherwise. So while it's really set up for a framework of a lot of experimentation, it does kind of simplify itself to just encourage, just choose Bowser, C-Stick him off the stage, and yeah, you can win. So that's it. That's World of Light, and that is Subspace. They both have their own positives, but there's still a lot of stuff holding them back from being the mode that we really want, Let's talk about what we really want in Adventure Mode. We all want to see these interactions between these characters because, like I said, Smash Bros. Is the only thing in gaming ever to bring such a giant crossover of different characters, of backgrounds, series, franchises. So seeing these characters interact together would be one of the highlights of an Adventure Mode. I think we all can agree that unique boss encounters as well is a staple of this kind of Adventure Mode series. Giving a final challenge and something unique more to fight than just a bunch of spear battles or master hand or whatever. If we combined a lot of what World of Light and Subspace offered together and bring it into a unified experience, I think that's what the key really is. I think there needs to be both a variety of regular enemies to fight as well as potentially even maybe like evil versions or spirit battles of you fighting against regular cast members on more traditional type stages. I think it's also important that they still have similar attributes of knockback to how you would be fighting a player character. So then combos and attacks actually link together and work rather than just a health bar going down. But if we want to go with a bigger level to explore in a bigger world, kind of like what Subspace did, rather than catering to the entire cast, I think it'd be better to actually design the levels around certain characters with a linear story path. Similar to how the target blasts were in Melee, where every character had a target blast stage that was completely based around the character's moveset, so the platform layouts that were set up there totally worked. I think something similar could totally be translated into the adventure style mode, where, there's really high up platforms that Kirby jumps up to, or, young Link using maybe his boomerangs to hit targets that are on the other side of walls. But these levels should also have mechanics based around the original game that the series are from. So let's say there's a Mario level. There'll be maybe moving platforms, Koopas and Goombas. Maybe the kind of twist in this level is you need to use your item-based power-up. Maybe there's a certain enemy that won't die unless you have a fire flower or something. Or maybe there's certain stretches where you need to intentionally get a Starman and run through it, maybe like running across spikes or something. Or maybe there's a Donkey Kong style level where, you have to shoot through barrels and stuff like that. Maybe swing across vines or having barrel throwing a mechanic built into the level. Or maybe you play a Mega Man stage where you're kind of running and gunning and attacking Mega Man enemies, by shooting them out. And you're basically playing like a Mega Man game within Smash Bros. And at the end of the stage, there's a Mega Man boss, but maybe while you're going through the stage, you can actually find a certain item or power-up that'll maybe help fight the boss. So maybe the boss is very projectile-oriented moveset, right? But maybe if you explored Mega Man's stage while you're progressing to the boss, you could find a Franklin badge. And if you keep it until the end of the stage, when you fight it, you'll have an infinitely easier time because all the projectiles will be just being sent back immediately, but a melee attack's obviously still hurt. There can still be kind of custom equipment, kind of like what Spirits offer and stuff like that, but I think that's what really comes down to. And having more inspired level design, built for certain characters even, and bringing elements from those series into these levels. Having unique enemies, not just only Smash Bros. Enemies, but also enemies from the original series. Realistically though, a mode like this, way too ambitious for Ultimate just because of how short the development time they had for this game and how much content they still wanted to pack into it. Will we ever see an adventure mode like this? Probably not. But what do you think? World of Light, Subspace, some sort of amalgamation between the two? What are your thoughts on an adventure mode in Smash Bros? How do you think the series should handle it? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a big awesome like, and if you haven't already, definitely subscribe for tons more on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Be sure to join the JammerProHD Discord channel. You can find friends to play Smash Bros. With, as well as keep up to date on when we also live stream every Saturday at 9 AM Pacific. Obviously, if anything changes or something comes up for me, I'll let you guys know on Twitter or whatever. We'll reschedule it probably to just Sunday or something, but we always try to stream at least once a week. And be sure to check out the JammerProHD merch store. Got a lot of new colors, designs, logos. So if you're looking for something like that, that's there too. Thanks again, guys, so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!